today we're going to be taking a look at the meta on Split and what you should be playing on Split in your games. Now to do this, what I've done is I went back in time to when Split was last in the queue, at least for pro play, and looking at, what they were picking. So this is the LCQ games before Champs and Masters Copenhagen. That was when the last time pros were playing Split. And I took a look and, got all of the data for all of the different classes. And so we're going to talk about, with the changes to the meta and the changes to the map, what now will have changed from the old meta and what should you be playing. So let's start off with the controllers, and you can see here on the left hand side of the screen that basically there were only 3 controllers who were really ever going to be played, and that was Omen, Astra, and Viper. But as many of you will know, and you can see this on the right hand side of the screen, Viper is very commonly going to be picked as a secondary controller. Almost never Viper is going to be just a primary solo controller on Split. So keep that in mind, and that's kind of what the right hand side of the screen is showing. The main debate basically for your primary controller is going to be between Omen and Astra. But as many of you will know, and as I have pointed out in a video before, the Omen one-ways have changed, and they do affect this map. For instance, there's just certain areas now where it's much more tricky to do an Omen one-way than it was before. This part in B main, I did do a whole video about this, that you can still do these one-ways, but they are just much more precise, and there are certain ones that, have gone, like this one here. You can't do one in this doorway anymore, and so Omen did get probably a bit worse, not a ton, but a bit worse, but quite a bit harder to play. For instance, trying to find this one here on A main, you really need to know like exactly where you're putting it, but you can still do them, right? So Omen maybe got like a bit harder to play, but not necessarily, too much worse. But I do think that overall that might shift a bit of the pick rate to where we end up in kind of more of a 50-50. Now, I do still think that Viper will be a very common secondary controller pick on Split, but of course we got an extra controller added to the game since Split has come back, and that of course is Harbor. And so what do I think of Harbor on Split? Do I think that Harbor, will be the new menace on Split that everyone starts playing? Well, unfortunately for Harbor, I don't think that Split is really his best map. I think that you can do stuff that you would want to do with Harbor. Viper is just going to do that a little bit better, or, Sage could even, if you're thinking of like slow effects and whatnot, Sage is going to do that slow effect a bit better than Harbor, maybe even a lot better than Harbor. So I don't really think that this is Harbor's map. Is he useless on this map? No, but I do think that Viper would be a better option if you're going to go for a secondary controller, and Omen and Astra will be a better option for a primary controller. Okay, moving on to the Duelists, and this is what the pick rate looked like back then, where obviously very Raze heavy, of course, a bit of Jet, and a tiny bit of Neon as well. But when it comes to the Duelist meta, I do think we will see change, where we're going to see more Jet than we saw in that pie chart just there, because obviously we were back in a chamber meta back then, and so I actually went back to Masters Reykjavik when we were back in a Jet meta, and Jet was around 40% on Split back then, and I think that we could see numbers maybe not that high, but approaching that 25 to 30%. I really wouldn't be surprised if you want kind of the best opping character in the game. That said, I do think that using an operator on this map got harder, right? This is one angle where, before you used to be able to just hold this like so, but now obviously you have to go between these two different elevations just there. There's other positions like this, right, that used to be, you could come down on the stairs here, only have your head shown and just do this, whereas now if you're going to up, you have to be kind of out in the open a bit more, right? You have to kind of show your whole body, right? They know where to hold for a headshot angle now. So, I do think there are some angles where it got a bit harder, but I do expect a bit more Jet. When it comes to the Initiators, you can see we have a nice kind of balance between 4 different Initiators, with Sova being the one who doesn't see any pick rate on Split. But between Breach, KO, Sky, and Fade, you have 4 decent options on this map that are all still going to fulfill a pretty good job. And when it comes to agents like Fade, I do expect that we will still see quite a bit of Fade, to be honest, because we are still going to see a lot of Raze, and obviously the combo of those 2 agents really does work quite well. And we've seen a lot of Sova recently, come back into the meta, as we've seen a lot of Jet recently come back into the meta. But on this map in particular, I still think we'll be seeing quite a bit of Raze, and therefore probably quite a bit of Fade as well. And then finally we come to the Sentinels, and obviously this is where the biggest change will be, because back then, of course, everyone was picking Chamber, and honestly, I'd be very shocked if, many teams were picking Chamber on Split these days. So, we're going to see a massive drastic change here from, taking all of that Chamber pick rate away, but who will it go to? Well, in my mind, even though we are in a pretty strong Killjoy meta right now, I do think that Split is Cypher's map. And the reason that I think that is because mainly due, really, to the attacking side. You know, all of the Sentinels, I think, have their own kind of decent defensive setups, but it's really these cages that you can do as Cypher that I think makes all of the difference, right? These cages give you control of this area just here. And what you can do with these cages is really, really strong, right? You can throw them from where I just did it just there, right? But when these cages go up, right, there can be 0 people here. I mean, you can send these cages off at any particular point in time, right? And it's going to deny all the information of any defenders just there. You could be doing about to do a full B exec, right? And then set off those cages on the other side of the map if you wanted to. You could have 5 people like ready and waiting, you know, as this cage comes down here, right? You could send a cage in there and have full 5 people all the way here, right on the doorway of the site, and then you go and exec, right? But none of the defenders can rotate, or, you know, they just freeze into place. Everyone is frozen here because they don't know if it's 0 people, they don't know if it's just you lurking, they don't know if it's a full 5 stack ready about to burst onto the A site. And that is really the reason that I think that Cypher dominates on this map. For those of you who followed me closely, you'll know that, you know, I was doing stats back then, kind of, you know, just before Masters Copenhagen, and on Split, the old Cypher, the old bad Cypher with the bad ult and, you know, the shorter trips and all that, still had a much higher win rate than the old Chamber, the super OP Chamber. Cypher was beating Chamber on this map, even back then. So, you know, Cypher is really good, and I think that a large part of it is to do with these cages. To be fair, these cages might not be as necessary as they used to be, again, because of this change, right? It's going to be harder for defenders to just sit here and hold this angle, so, you know, blocking the line of sight here might not be quite as important, but I do still think it's going to be important enough, and I do still think these cages will be incredibly good, and there's enough great Cypher setups. I mean, these trips now, there's a ton of different trips you can do now as well here on both sides, so I think Cypher is an absolute, you know, he's going to be absolutely amazing to play on this map, and you're going to find a lot of success with Cypher on this map. So I think that that's going to be the choice. Obviously, some people, Killjoy is still a perfectly respectable choice. Teams like FPX, you know, showed that Killjoy can be used on this map, and you can find success with it even back then. So Killjoy will still be a decent choice as well. And when it comes to Sage, she obviously kind of fulfills her own niche in the Sentinel role, but honestly, I mean, you can be even more lazy with this wall than you used to be, because, you know, you used to be able to do the little jump off the little lip here. But, you know, you no longer can do that anymore, so, you know, you can just put up really any wall you want to and be safe from any of that kind of thing happening. I think Sage in this map in particular, right, let's say we're doing a B split, we've come into Heaven, we're trying to come to here. I think one of the main uses of Sage is to put up, you know, some kind of wall just there. I think that's a very strong wall that stops obviously any reflanks coming in. You can now really just, you know, really attack this site and kind of force them to come through this tiny choke point, and you send some slow orbs into there, right? And good luck trying to retake this site. And the same is true on the A site as well, right? If we, again, came into Heaven and got this Heaven control, again, if we can, you know, put any kind of wall across there, right, and stop any rotators coming across, again, you throw some slow orbs in there, you know, good luck, right? We just get so much control, and you're going to be stuck there for quite some time with these slow orbs and this wall here. So, you know, good luck with that. And I think that that is one of the primary uses of Sage. I think it's a very good use for Sage. If you can get control of these Heaven areas, your attacking side will be pretty good as well. And so my overall new tier list for what Split might look like is you got Raze and Cypher at the top, being very strong agents on this map. You've got an A tier full of, you know, decent agents of Fade, Viper, Astra, Breach, Jet, Sage, and Omen. In the B tier, you've got some very playable agents that I think are fine as well, in KO, Killjoy, and Skye. In the C tier, now we're getting into more niche stuff with Brim, Neon, and Harbor. And then in the D tier, you've got Chamber, Phoenix, Reyna, Sova, and Yoru.